When will Call of Duty start landing on Game Pass is a pretty big question. We're seeing one that has been answered by Phil Spencer. It's been answered by Activision. But more than when, I think is a question of how. Because with the way the question has been put forth and answered in the various ways, both by Phil Spencer and Activision, I don't know if we're actually going to see an immediate day and date strategy. I actually think there could be a variety of ways that this rolls out. And I do think eventually the goal would be to have Call of Duty landing day and date on Game Pass. You don't go after something the size of Activision and not take property that valuable and that popular and not use it as a way to fill that funnel of Game Pass subscribers. We know they have very big goals for Game Pass by 2030. We know Activision, according to Phil Spencer, is an accelerant to their strategy. Activision's not their strategy, but an accelerant, he said in that interview. And we do have an article from PC Gamer we're going to look at in a moment, as well as a tweet from Activision official Twitter account, basically responding to whether or not the latest Call of Duty would be landing on Game Pass. We saw something similar happen prior to Diablo 4's launch. They wanted to set that expectation because I think they're anticipating, look, everybody's wondering, when is this happening? When are we going to see this benefit of the Activision Blizzard deal start to take hold? Phil Spencer himself in August of 2023 tried to temper expectations. He actually said that it might not happen until 2025. And even again, the question of when doesn't necessarily answer the question of how. And I think in order to kind of establish what I'm saying, we need to look at the tweet from Activision. So just to sort of set the stage, they sent this on October the 9th. And it says here, it's awesome to see anticipation building for Modern Warfare 3 as we continue to work towards regulatory approval of the Microsoft deal. We've been getting some questions whether our upcoming or recently launched games will be available via Game Pass. And they said, while we do not have plans to put Modern Warfare 3 or Diablo 4 into Game Pass this year, once the deal closes, we expect to start working with Xbox to bring our titles to more players around the world. And the important part here is right here. It says, we anticipate we would begin adding games, plural, into Game Pass sometime in the course of the next year. So what this means is that they're saying, over the course of the next year, we're going to be adding games. This does not mean they're going to be immediately doing day and date. This could just indicate we're going to be putting all of the old stuff on Game Pass. Now, that's still a huge value to the Game Pass subscribers and the Game Pass catalog, because you can go on there right now. There's a lot of great old titles on there, Battlefield, Titanfall, things like that, where you can just go and play an old classic title right there, and you don't have to buy it or anything. It's just part of the Game Pass subscription funnel. And suddenly having the Activision backlog of games, that catalog injection is going to be huge. But that doesn't mean they're going to immediately jump into day and date. And I'm only saying this because I'm thinking through strategically how this might look. And the way I think about this is I could see this sort of be a ramp-up strategy where essentially in 2024, they would say, hey, we're going to be adding every single Call of Duty ever made to Game Pass. They could even stagger it out, and every month they could be adding a new one, right? A new Call of Duty, not a new Call of Duty, but like they could be going through the entire catalog of Call of Duty, like every month. And that'd be really exciting, honestly, as somebody who cut my teeth on the very first Call of Duty on PC back when it originally launched. I think people would enjoy that, just sort of reminiscing, maybe even playing through the campaigns each month, saying, all right, I got a new Call of Duty to download. Let me go check it out. And that would be another great way to keep people in the Game Pass funnel. You don't want to just throw it on all right at once, because the goal isn't just to get somebody on Game Pass for a month and they get to binge all of Call of Duty or something like that. The goal is to get them on and keep them. The only way they're going to grow the subscriber funnel larger than the 25 to 30, they're somewhere in that window. I don't think they've hit 30 million or surpassed 30 million, because the person who put 30 million subscribers on their LinkedIn took that down, and then Microsoft reiterated that the most recent milestone was still the milestone, 25 million. So I believe they've climbed higher than 25 million, but we don't know to what degree. If they want that number to grow, you got to get people in the funnel and keep them. And a great way to do that would be to spend like most of, or a good portion of 2024, slowly rolling out a Call of Duty every month and just slowly working your way through the entire catalog. Now, what this would mean is, if there is a brand new Call of Duty release in 2024, it would not be day and date. They would almost wait. I'm not saying that they won't. I'm just imagining if you're doing a rollout strategy, you could wait. You could really capitalize on one more year of Call of Duty selling normal retail, no Game Pass inclusion. We know they get most of their sales from PlayStation, and then PC and Xbox basically typically come in second or third place respectively. There's also the possibility that they could get a respectable version ready to go for the Nintendo Switch 2, and we know the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be leveraging DLSS, so perhaps they could get a good version. I think my biggest concern with Nintendo suddenly having Call of Duty is that they don't do online all that well. The infrastructure's not great, even when you play their first-party stuff like Nintendo Switch Sports. The one that's the most tolerable is bowling, because it doesn't really matter if someone's lagging during the bowling because you're not playing directly against them. But my kiddos were trying it out, whether it was volleyball or the sword fighting, and it was always laggy. There was always problems, and I don't think, even with the friend code number thing that they do, the infrastructure doesn't seem built well for a Call of Duty. Now, they could put a Call of Duty campaign on, and the arena shooter aspect could sort of be there if you want to play PvP, but I still have a lot of reservations and thoughts and skepticism about whether or not we're ever going to see a mainline Call of Duty land on the Nintendo Switch, unless maybe they start putting the classics on there and just the campaign, if they can get, respectable performance on the Nintendo Switch too. But that would be, in my mind, sort of the last major release where they say, hey, this one's releasing not day and date. What that would mean is when you roll over out of 2024, you've slowly took all the old Call of Duties and put them on Game Pass, a couple every month or one every month, and you had a normal retail release of a brand new Call of Duty title. Well, then in 2025, this would be the stagger year. You still wouldn't do day and date. I know Phil Spencer said that's the earliest it might happen, but remember, he said that's like the earliest that it might happen. So they could do a stagger, and then that year they could say, hey, we're going to bring the Call of Duty from last year, we're going to bring it on to Game Pass now, right? It's 6 months old, it's 9 months old, and they finally put it on Game Pass. Adding that value, capstoning the trickle effect of adding Call of Duties to Game Pass over the course of, 12 months or something. And then the newest Call of Duty in 2025 could have a shorter stagger window. It could be, again, the last time they sell it, normal everywhere, and then a couple months later it lands on Game Pass. And what this would mean is that by the time we get to 2026, it's day and date going forward. Because in 2024, if they're just doing nothing but adding Call of Duty to Game Pass on a regular cadence, that also includes games like Diablo, right? That's great marketing. You can literally be putting out a commercial, an advertisement, a tweet, a trailer, like every other week, promoting Game Pass. I think that's a lot of value, and stretching that out is something that I anticipate them doing. I don't see them just exploding the catalog over the course of like a week or something. That would be incredibly reckless in my mind. You also give players a lot of paralysis if suddenly the catalog explodes and doubles in size. You need to do, I think, a more staggered approach. But then 2025 and 2026 could be that stagger method where they are again getting to have advertisements and commercials and Game Pass promotions to tell people, look, Call of Duty, come play it on Game Pass, right? Play it on Game Pass. And then from that point forward in 2026, you would be day and date. Now, I had somebody suggest in a discussion when we were talking about this, they thought they're always going to do staggered because Call of Duty sells too many copies in its launch week, in its launch month. They're always going to sell it first and throw it on Game Pass later. I don't think that's a likelihood. I think they might do that the first couple of years, do the staggered approach, because they kind of could get away with it. They'd have such a backlog of Call of Duty titles to put on Game Pass. You could almost flood it, 1 or 2 every month, that it might go unnoticed that the brand new one hasn't hit yet. They might just be able to kind of hide behind the deluge of Call of Duty hitting Game Pass. But I think eventually you got to pull the trigger on day and date. Buying Activision for $69 billion and then not putting Call of Duty day and date, that just feels like a backward strategy. You're putting out such a significant amount of money and then not leveraging what is likely to be one of the most, if not the most valuable pieces of property for console. Now, I know the most valuable property is King Mobile and the mobile revenue. We know that's going to be fantastic for the gaming division of Xbox to have a better revenue stream. But in the console space, in the more traditional gaming space, the non-mobile space, Call of Duty is the most lucrative, and to not leverage that, I think would be incredibly backwards. I don't think that they would do that. Now, you got to remember, most of their retail sales and traditional sales of Call of Duty comes from PlayStation, roughly 48 to 50%, so about half. The other half breaks down. You could obviously pad that if you are able to start releasing Call of Duty on the Nintendo Switch 2, like an actual respectable version. But they were commentating on this. Like, PC Gamer basically talked about this tweet, and they thought the same thing, that like they'll be adding games over the course of the year. You can see here in this article, they cited the tweet, and they basically came to a similar conclusion and idea that we could be looking at a ramp up and a trickle out of older titles. In my mind, the Switch doesn't excel enough with online. They'd still have to heavily lean on PC and PlayStation for those retail sales. Even if you ignore the online challenges of the Nintendo Switch, I don't know if that ecosystem will ever be a main funnel of Call of Duty purchases. I think the dilemma and the danger would be if you try it and it doesn't go well, that's sort of the end of the matter. We also have to look at what does well on the Nintendo Switch, like Splatoon doesn't do well. That's the only place that it is. But if it was anywhere else, I don't think it would do as well. And I think that's really going to make it tough for something like Call of Duty to come over to that platform and to flourish. Xbox's goal is to grow the Game Pass subscriber count. They want to have, like 100 million subscribers by 2030, which seems insane to me. And I do think Call of Duty will play a huge role, but that doesn't mean you're going to be seeing it anytime soon. I mean, anytime that a game hits Game Pass, we know that potentially feeds the funnel. But I think that what we really are going to see from the Game Pass Call of Duty synergy is more of an ongoing relationship. And I even put forth ideas about how they could do this in another video. I think they have to start thinking of Game Pass as a subscription with features and benefits, as opposed to a subscription that just gives you an insane catalog of games. So you would get more stuff on your battle pass. You would get currency to spend every season, so that if anybody cancels Game Pass, they feel like they're losing perks, benefits, features, and cool stuff in Call of Duty. I think that's the road you're going to see them take. If they don't take that road, I'll be very, very surprised. It's the same reason that your internet company is always trying to get you to sign up for home phone, which to a lot of us is like, why on earth would I want a home phone? But if they can get you to have multiple services in your home, it's way harder for you to cancel. That's called sticky marketing. And if you have Game Pass and there's this amazing catalog and there's extra games every month, that's only sort of one value offer. If you go a couple of months and the games aren't that great, you might cancel. If you don't care about all the old Call of Duties, you might cancel. But if you're an active player of Call of Duty, whether it's Warzone or the latest Modern Warfare, and there's a new season, and there's a battle pass, and they're giving you currency to spend in the cosmetic store as a Game Pass holder every month. Maybe they give you a little bit of currency. Maybe they give you some bonuses on the Game Pass. Maybe there's an extra tier of rewards only for Game Pass holders. Now, that's not exclusivity, right? Everybody's getting Call of Duty. Everybody's getting the season. Everybody's getting the battle pass. But you give features, benefits, bonuses to the people on the Game Pass funnel. So when will Call of Duty land on Game Pass? At the earliest, you're going to see the classic CODs and the old CODs and the backlog catalog land probably in 2024. I think the better question is how. Like when? It's inevitable. You're going to be getting Call of Duty on Game Pass. You're going to be getting day and date. The better question is how. Do they go staggered? Do they give you benefits? Do they go day and date right away, or do they wait for a while? I think that remains to be seen. But we know that Call of Duty is going to come to Game Pass eventually, and I do think The real question is how. I want to know what you think, though. Leave a comment below. I love that feedback. If you decide to do a membership on this channel, you can follow this video into the next segment where we hang out and talk with the memberships. You can click join, and for $5 a month, you get access to all those extra, we call them debriefs. If you don't do memberships on YouTube or you're not interested in that, just hit subscribe and the like button, because that ensures that I can see you in the next video.